Welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We are so glad you're here with us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We've got a really great one today.
We absolutely do. Today we're exploring this really fascinating narrative-style article by Aaron Rose. It's published on TechReader, and it's titled The Secret Life of Claude Code, The Beginning.
Right.
And the format of this source material is, well, it's really unusual and highly effective, I think.
It is. It completely avoids reading like a dry technical manual or, one of those breathless press releases we see all the time now.
Exactly. Instead, it reads almost like a play. It uses fiction to get at some very concrete truths about how we work today.
It's a clever approach. By using this narrative structure, the author manages to explore some very deep, very real professional concepts without getting bogged down in sterile software documentation.
Yeah. And before we get into the weeds here, I just want to say right up front, while our main characters today are software engineers, the dilemma they face is about to become the reality for basically every white-collar worker on the planet.
Oh, absolutely.
If you use a computer for your job, whether you're drafting legal contracts or building marketing campaigns, analyzing financial data, this dynamic applies directly to you.
100%. The technology might be aimed at developers in this specific story, but the psychological shift required to use it is universal across all knowledge work.
So picture this setting. We are in a grand Victorian library in London. Imagine high ceilings, walls lined with books, the faint smell of old paper and polished wood.
It's very atmospheric.
Very. The author specifically describes it as the kind of place where ideas are taken seriously and where hype is shown the door.
Right.
And in this quiet, deliberate setting, we meet our two main characters. First, there's Margaret. She is a deeply pragmatic, veteran senior software engineer. She's basically seen every technological trend come and go.
She's the anchor of the story.
She is. And then there is Timothy. He's her junior colleague, and he is currently buzzing with that awestruck energy of someone who just got back from a really flashy tech conference.
You have the seasoned veteran grounding the enthusiastic newcomer. It's a classic dynamic.
Yeah.
But it serves a very specific purpose here to represent the two ways the industry is currently reacting to artificial intelligence.
So true. So our mission for this deep dive is to strip away all that conference hype surrounding AI developer tools. We are going to use Margaret and Timothy's conversation to uncover what this technology actually does to a professional's workflow, what it does to their brain, and ultimately what it does to their core responsibilities.
It's a big mission.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. Timothy is practically vibrating with excitement to finally see Claude Code in action.
He's so ready.
He walks up to Margaret's desk, expecting this literal revelation. He mentions that he half expected lights, or maybe a voice booming from the ceiling.
That reaction is incredibly common right now, honestly.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. The marketing around these tools has been so astronomical that people subconsciously expect the software to arrive with like a cinematic score playing in the background. We have been completely conditioned to expect magic.
But then comes the big, disappointing reveal. Margaret just points to a screen positioned between their desks, and it is just a command line window.
Just a black box.
A patient, completely silent, blinking cursor in a terminal. Nothing more. Timothy is utterly underwhelmed. He says, "So this is it."
And Margaret, without even looking up from her notebook, replies, "This is it."
I love that response.
What's fascinating here is the massive disconnect between Timothy's sci-fi expectations and the actual practical reality of what this tool is. Margaret has to sit him down and lay out the facts.
Right.
Based on the text, this isn't some ethereal, omnipresent consciousness. It's a command line coding assistant operating directly inside the terminal.
Let's pause there for a second, because that sounds a bit intimidating. For anyone listening who doesn't code daily, what does working in a terminal or a command line window actually look like?
That is a really helpful clarification to make. For non-developers, think of it this way. There is no fancy graphical interface. There are no colorful buttons to click, no drag and drop menus, no smooth animation.
Just text.
Just text. It's a raw, usually black screen with plain text and a blinking cursor. It's the most bare bones, direct way to talk to a computer's operating system.
So it looks completely unspectacular.
Exactly.
But the text makes it clear that its capabilities are actually highly advanced.
Highly advanced, but grounded. Margaret explains that this tool reads the entire code base. And again, to demystify that term, a code base isn't just one or two files you happen to have open on your screen.
Right.
It's the entire architectural blueprint of the software you are building. That could be tens of thousands of interlinked files, and the AI reads all of it.
That's wild.
It is. It can write new files, edit existing ones, and run your testing suites.
And testing suites are basically automated quality control checks to ensure the code doesn't break, right?
Exactly. It can work through a whole sequence of engineering tasks with a level of independence that earlier iterations of these tools simply could not touch.
When Timothy hears that, his immediate reaction is to jump to the most obvious conclusion. He says, right, so it writes code for you, you describe what you want, and it produces it.
The trap we all fall into.
Yes. But Margaret immediately stops him. She taps her pen on the desk and highlights the single most crucial preposition in their entire conversation. She corrects him. She says, it writes code with you, not for you.
Margaret points out that saying it writes code for you is the first and biggest mistake most professionals make. It frames the relationship entirely backward.
But wait, isn't the whole appeal of these tools that they're supposed to do the heavy lifting?
That's the marketing pitch, sure.
So if I can't just hand the task off and have it done for me, doesn't that defeat the entire purpose of automation?
Not quite, and that is the fundamental misunderstanding Margaret is trying to correct. If you expect it to work for you independently, you are abdicating your role in the process.
Ah, I see.
Margaret uses a brilliant metaphor here to explain why that fails. She calls it the vending machine fallacy.
Let's dive into that vending machine idea because it really clarifies things. She tells Timothy that treating this AI like a vending machine is a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
You drop your coin, which in this case is your prompt. A shiny solution drops out the bottom, you grab it, and you move on.
Which is exactly how most consumer software has trained us to behave for the last 2 decades.
Exactly.
We're used to a paradigm of input, output, consume. Google search, calculators, spell check, they all operate like vending machines.
And Margaret acknowledges that the vending machine approach actually works fine for trivial things. If you just need a quick, generic snippet of code, sure, drop your coin in.
It works for the easy stuff.
Right. But she makes it crystal clear that for work that actually matters, for building robust, complex systems, treating the AI like a vending machine fails disastrously.
Completely.
I have to say, I remember a few months ago, I tried to use a generative AI tool to write what I thought was a simple email to a client. I just tossed in a vague prompt, treating it like a vending machine.
How did that go?
Oh, it was terrible. It spit out this overly formal, almost Shakespearean apology that had nothing to do with the actual context of the relationship. I almost hit send before reading it closely. It would have made me look completely ridiculous.
That is a perfect low-stakes example of exactly what Margaret is warning against.
Colate.
When the machine delivers something that looks professionally formatted or grammatically correct, it feels like the work is done. But as Margaret tries to show Timothy, you haven't done the work. You've just pulled a lever. If you don't evaluate the output, you are flying blind.
That brings up Timothy's next point of confusion. He pushes back because he has seen the slick conference demos.
The ones where everything works flawlessly.
Exactly. He talks about how someone stands on stage, describes a complex feature in plain English, and the AI just magically builds it end-to-end, tests included. He is totally bought into the hype.
And Margaret's response is so good.
It is. With that perfect, dry pragmatism, she replies, "You've seen the good demos."
Timothy is genuinely shocked that there are bad demos. Margaret has to clarify that there are honest ones, which naturally are rarely shared by marketing teams on social media.
Right. No one posts the video of the AI spiraling into an endless loop of broken logic.
Never.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Margaret doesn't bash the tool. She says Claude Code is genuinely remarkable and that in the right hands, it accelerates serious work in ways she wouldn't have believed 2 years ago.
She respects the technology.
She does.
Yeah?
But then she delivers her core thesis. She looks at Timothy and says, it is as good as you are.
The tool is an amplifier, not a creator. It does not generate competence out of thin air. It amplifies whatever the human user brings to the keyboard.
Aaron Rose lays out the contrast between those inputs and outputs beautifully in the text. Margaret explains that if you bring clarity of thought, if you use precise language, and if you have a genuine understanding of the problem you are trying to solve,
then the tool does extraordinary work.
Yes, it acts like a brilliant partner. But if you bring vagueness, if you bring wishful thinking, and if you bring a reluctance to actually think the problem through before you start typing,
then it produces, as Margaret puts it, confident nonsense at impressive speed.
That phrase, confident nonsense, it really strikes a nerve.
It's so accurate.
It perfectly captures what it looks like when technology masks a lack of human preparation. She drives home that the tool is only as good as the thinking behind the prompt. A well-worded prompt that is built on muddled thinking is still going to give you muddled results. The AI cannot compensate for a lack of engineering judgment.
Timothy slowly begins to realize the gravity of what she's saying. He concludes that the developers who are out there struggling with this tool, getting frustrated with the messy outputs, they might not actually have a tool problem. Margaret confirms it. She says they have a thinking problem. The tool hasn't failed them. The tool has simply made their own muddled thinking visible.
Oof. That has to be a deeply uncomfortable realization for any professional.
Highly uncomfortable. No one wants to realize that their inability to get good results reflects their own lack of clarity.
Of course not.
We naturally want to blame the software. But as Margaret notes, while it is uncomfortable, it is also incredibly useful. It forces you to confront your own vagueness. If the output is a mess, you have to look in the mirror and ask, did I actually know what I wanted before I asked for it?
Which leads Timothy right into a very relatable, almost existential panic.
Understandably.
He looks at that blinking terminal, and he asks the question he's been afraid to voice. He says, if this thing can read the whole code base and write the code and run all the tests, what exactly is my job? What am I even doing while it sits there and works?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Timothy is voicing the defining anxiety of the modern knowledge worker.
Yes, he is.
If the machine handles the execution, where is my human value? Margaret's response defines the modern evolution of human labor. She tells him, your job is judgment.
Judgment. Not typing, not syntax. Judgment. How does she break that down practically?
She explains that the human's job is deciding what to build in the first place and why it needs to be built. It is reviewing the output the tool generates and understanding it deeply enough to defend it in a meeting.
Defending it is key.
Very much so. It's catching those subtle, hidden errors that look completely correct on the surface but are structurally flawed. And perhaps most importantly, it is asking better questions than the last ones you asked. The tool handles the implementation, but the human handles all of the responsibility.
And she delivers a gentle but stern warning to Timothy about this. She says that if you get to a point where you cannot read and understand the code the AI writes, you are no longer an engineer. You are just someone who approves things.
That implies a total loss of agency. If you are just an approver, you are redundant.
And to you, listening right now, I want to emphasize how universal this warning is. Let's step outside of software engineering for a moment.
Good idea.
Imagine you are a lawyer using an AI to draft a complex merger agreement. The AI spits out 50 pages of dense legalese in 30 seconds. It looks perfect. But if you don't read every single clause, if you just skim it and click approve because you assume the machine knows best, you are absorbing all the liability if there is a catastrophic loophole buried on page 40.
And you'll be the one in trouble.
Exactly. The same goes for a marketer generating an ad campaign. If you don't understand the cultural nuances of the copy the AI generated and you just push it live, you own the fallout.
That is the crux of the issue right there. If the system breaks, the tool isn't going to get fired. The tool isn't going to sit in a post-mortem meeting and explain why the system crashed or why the client is suing. You are.
You own the output. Understanding what the tool cannot do is just as important as knowing what it can. Margaret tells Timothy flat out, it is not magic. It does not think, it does not intend, and it absolutely does not have insight.
This raises an important question about capability versus understanding. The text makes it clear that the tool is extraordinarily good at recognizing massive patterns, generating coherent code, and working within a strictly defined context.
Right.
Those are highly valuable capabilities, but they are fundamentally not the same thing as human understanding.
Timothy brings up a valid counterpoint here.
Yeah.
He says, but I've read articles that make it sound like it understands. Margaret calmly replies that those articles are written by people who are either deeply confused or they are selling something, or both.
We are constantly anthropomorphizing machines. We project human traits onto them. Margaret points out that when an AI produces a piece of code that is elegant and unexpected, to the human brain, it feels like insight. We experience a feeling of awe, but our human feelings about the output are not actual evidence of the AI's internal process.
Let's break that down because I think it is the core of the public's confusion right now. When you say the AI isn't having an internal process or a eureka moment, what is actually happening under the hood? The text mentions it is just running a probability matrix. What does that mean in plain English?
Think of it as the world's most advanced autocomplete.
Oh.
When you type happy birthday to, into your phone, it suggests you as the next word. It doesn't understand what a birthday is. It doesn't know what a year is or what aging feels like.
It's just a pattern.
Yes, it just knows that mathematically the word you almost always follows that sequence of words based on all the text it has ever processed. These advanced AI tools are doing that exact same thing, just on a scale of billions of parameters. They are predicting the most mathematically probable next piece of text or code based on massive training data.
So it isn't reasoning through a problem step by step in its mind. It is just calculating probabilities incredibly fast.
Precisely. And the reason it tricks us into thinking it is conscious is because human beings are wired for what psychologists call theory of mind.
Theory of mind.
Yeah. When we see a cohesive sentence or an elegant line of code, our brains automatically assume a conscious thinking mind produced it. We are evolutionarily programmed to look for intent. So when the machine spits out a great answer, we feel like it gets us. But as Margaret says, our feelings are not evidence.
Just because we feel understood doesn't mean the machine possesses comprehension. You can see the relief wash over Timothy when he hears this. Aaron Rose paints this great image of Timothy sitting back, looking at his cup of cold tea, and realizing he is still fundamentally needed.
The existential dread dissipates because he realizes the burden of adaptation is entirely on his shoulders. The technology is here. The variable is his approach to it.
Margaret reminds him that the question was never whether he would be replaced by a tool. He was always needed. The real question is whether he will learn to use this powerful tool well, or whether he will let the tool use him.
Right.
Will he be the engineer applying judgment, or will he degrade into just being an approver of confident nonsense?
It is a critical fork in the road for any professional today.
That leads to the closing scene of this narrative. It's the end of the day. The afternoon light filtering through the library windows is turning the color of old paper again. Just gorgeous imagery setting the mood.
Beautiful writing.
Timothy asks when they start properly, and Margaret says, tomorrow. They're going to install it and give it a real task. And she gives him a homework assignment for the night.
A very specific kind of homework. She doesn't tell him to read a manual.
No. She tells him to think of one real problem he's currently working on. Not a toy example from a tutorial. A genuine, messy problem from their actual code base. She tells him to come in the next morning prepared to describe it clearly and completely. Because, as she notes, the quality of his description is going to tell them both something very interesting.
Because the description is the engineering.
Yes.
The clarity of thought required to isolate a complex problem, understand its parameters, and articulate a path forward. That is the actual work. The prompt is merely the mechanical translation of that deeply human labor into a format the machine can process.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a fancy new command line tool, but Margaret's final piece of wisdom flips the entire paradigm of how we work with AI on its head. The ultimate lesson here is that a prompt is not the beginning of the work. It is the end of the thinking.
I want to underscore that. The prompt is the end of the thinking. If you are typing before you have fully conceptualized the problem, before you have mapped out the architecture of what you need, you have already failed the assignment. You've turned back into the person kicking the side of the vending machine, hoping something good falls out.
And that brings us to a final provocative thought that I want to leave you with today. Something for you to mull over or explore on your own as you go about your week.
Let's hear it.
If a tool like this perfectly amplifies the engineering judgment that is already there, and if it only highlights the deep thinking we've done before we even touch the keyboard to type a prompt, what happens when we rely on the tool so heavily that we stop practicing the deep thinking required to form that judgment in the first place? Could the real danger be that we forget how to think before we prompt?
It is the ultimate modern paradox. The tool requires our sharpest, most refined judgment to function well, but the sheer convenience of the tool might slowly erode our ability to generate that very judgment over time.
It is a fascinating tightrope we are all walking now. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We appreciate you taking the time to explore these ideas with us. Keep questioning your tools, avoid the vending machine trap, and above all, keep bringing clarity to your own work. Until next time.